Shine.fm presents Stronger Together, a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationships, and community. Here's Seth Tower Hurd.
This is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. My name is Seth Tower Hurd, and on this episode, we're talking about both personal development and parenting with my friend Matt from the band Superchick. Actually, kind of grew up listening to Shine.fm and then got in a band that was on Shine.fm.
That's right. That's right.
So we're going to talk about the different stages of life and then how you're talking about this with your kids, because you and I met I mean, dude, we were like 19, and I feel like in a lot of ways we kind of grew up together because you were in a band and I was on the radio, and those aren't normal things to do.
Right? Yes. So good. So true, man.
So let's start right there because, you know, you've had a couple of different stages or transitions of life, right? You had a lot of success very young. And I've got a friend that has like an accountant that was like in the Little League World Series when he was in 6th grade.
Yes.
And apparently that was the pinnacle of his life. He still talks about it.
That's right. It's tough when you peak at 6, man. That's a big deal.
You know, and hey, so that's great to have some success early on. You know, however, you had success early on and you were able to move on and reinvent yourself and be successful in other things and realize that God built you for more than one thing. So, I mean, dude, by the time most people were about the age of finishing college, probably, I mean, you were at the Grammys, you're texting me, you were standing next to major A-list celebrities. Right. So you go through all that stuff, right? Yeah. When most people are just trying to get a degree. What was that like for you?
Well, I think for me, I always was aware that I was along for the ride. You know, I think it's tough because I always knew from an early age that like what I do is not who I am. You know, it shapes who you are, but it's not fully your identity. And so it was just funny. I mean, the reality of it is like I was in a band called Superchick. Like I wrote songs for teenage girls. Like how much of me was really in it, I don't know. But when people, you know, I think it was great when you had success because you felt a part of it. But also when people were hating on it, it was easy to like separate yourself too. It's like, well, it's called Superchick. Like it's for 15-year-old girls. If you're not a 15-year-old girl, you might not like it, and that's okay. But being able to sit at the Grammys and be able to do things that you've kind of always dreamed of at such a young age was amazing. It kind of shaped me, I mean, of course, to who I am today as a grown-up. Okay,
well, so you really from the beginning had the right attitude, because I don't think you have to go to the Grammys to wind up with an attitude that really jacks up your Christianity and, quite frankly, your family and friends, because you kind of wind up arrogant. It could just be that, you know, you were the top salesperson or you were in a local play and, you know, and you kind of wind up getting cocky and think that thing is me. And then when that thing goes away, a lot of times people can wind up being hurtful to other people because they're scared that they lost their thing. Right. So was that was that just good parenting on the part of your parents that, you know, you went in and realized that this wasn't who you were? It was just something you did for a stage of your life?
I mean, sure. I mean, I owe a lot to my parents. I think for them, you know, just having a foundation of being respectful, being polite, being gracious, you know, always coming at a situation with a servant's heart, you know, I think was something that, of course, it was built since the day I was born. But also I think too, just kind of sometimes looking at my peers who might have not been as kind or gracious to the people who were buying the records and really providing them to live their dream, just didn't really sit right with me. You know, to me, I couldn't just play a show. Like I had to go out and I had to meet every single fan and tell them thank you, because the reality of it is, or those are the people that were letting me do things that people literally dream of, you know? So I think I saw that, and I would definitely owe that to parenting.
This is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. Matt Dally joins me. Had a lot of success very early on in the band Superchick in Christian music, and now, you know, is married and has a different career and is a parent. When you think about your own kids right now, you know, whenever you meet any 8-year-old, what they say when you ask them what they want to do, they say, well, I want to be a YouTuber. That's going to be my career. Pretty much 100% of 8-year-olds think they're going to make a living on YouTube.
So true.
And honestly, the thing is some of them are actually going to do it.
That's right. That's right.
So,
That's
you know, like, what's that like with you as a parent right now? Because your parents really kind of embraced you and helped you understand that you could go do something that maybe a lot of people didn't think was reasonable. You know, I think about our buddy David Crowder, who was going to be an insurance agent. I mean, he was going to take over the family insurance business, and it turned out his songs were so good he didn't.
That's right.
You know, but it's becoming more likely that your kids, my unborn child due in October, can make a living at something totally weird.
That's right. Well, I think it's funny because even on the road, I would always get in trouble because anytime anybody would ever bring up college or anything, I would always say, oh, don't go, or oh, you're in college. I would say, drop out. And I would get parents that would look at me like I was crazy. And the reality of it is that I really think their kids should drop out of school. No, but I think in society, we are just trained to be like, this is the stage of life. You're supposed to graduate high school. You're supposed to go to college. You're supposed to get a degree, and you're supposed to do this. And the reality of it is God might not be calling you to do that. And if I could be the one voice of not reason, but if I could plant that seed and say, you know, there is another option out there. I'm okay with that, you know, and that's what's funny about even my relationship now. My wife is an Ivy League school grad. I am a community college dropout, South Suburban Community College, South Holland, Illinois. What up? Go Bulldogs. I went there for about 6 or 7 weeks, and we have different versions of what education is. And I think one of the biggest things about parenting, and it's true for education too, is every child is different. Every kid is different. And I think it's funny, we read these parenting books and we read these strategies and we try to generalize this impossible task of parenting. And it's not just a book. Like, every kid comes out and you're like, whoa, you're so different. So for one kid, college might be the right thing. And for the other kid, it's the YouTube channel. Yeah, for sure. This is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. So let's go into that a little bit more about, like, as you've seen your own kids develop, and we're talking about parenting here. So, I mean, they're young. They're pretty young still, but what do you see? Yeah. I think for me, it's no fear, you know, which I think is something that a lot of kids don't have. And I want them to keep it that way. I think a lot of times we always tell them to, you know, be quiet, sit down, don't do this, don't do that, which is good. Obviously, we should have a foundation of, you know, law-abiding citizens. But I think we're super quick to stifle their personalities and stifle that creativity sometimes, you know, and allowing them to do that. And I'm guilty of that too. I mean, there's times where they're getting too obnoxiously loud and I'm like, quiet down. And it's like, no, they're actually having make-believe and they're playing. Nothing's being broken, you know, like, and I think I struggle with that too as a parent, just to be able to say, you know what, no, you're being a kid. I don't want to ever make you afraid or like, oh, I have to be quiet now, or I can't color this way, or I really, really need to get better at that because I don't want to stifle that creativity and instill fear in my kids, because I think that's where it comes from at first.
Yeah, you know, Amanda and I will in less than 3 months have a newborn, and then I know that there will be some sleepless nights, and then there'll be some worry, and then a whole bunch of things will happen, and I'll have a 20-year-old.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I think it goes about that fast, right? And I'm already thinking a lot about how those, like, how, obviously you can't have your kids burning the neighbor's house down, but how you really have to walk that road. As Proverbs says, the best translation of that, train up a child in the way that they should go.
Right.
The best translation is probably according to their bent, like according to their natural abilities.
That's right. That's right.
Even as I spend most of my time in the business community now, and happen to help Shine.fm out with some stuff after 10 years on the station and doing some other stuff, and there are 20 to 25-year-olds that I meet in the business world that don't know how to do anything, I think because their parents parented them so hard, and they got straight A's, and they thought that was the path to success, and now these young adults don't know what to do if they're not being told what to do.
That's right.
And that's something I think a lot about with parenting right now.
Of course. Well, I think we try to do so much for them. I mean, I always wanted justice to be served from a very young age. And I remember specifically, it was Push Pops came out, this little candy that was in this plastic thing, and you can like push it up and down and put it in your pocket. And I wanted to Push Pop so bad. And we went to Walgreens, we bought a Push Pop. I brought it home and it was broken. And I was furious. I was like, they ripped me off. Like, we are going back there. And my mom first was kind of shocked, and I was probably 4 at the time. And she said, I will take you there, but you need to voice your concern. I'm not doing it for you. And I was like, cool, drive me there. So we drove up to Walgreens in Tinley Park, walked straight up to the cashier, threw the purple Push Pop on the table, and was like, you guys ripped me off. I deserve another one. I want my money back, or I want another candy. And like the 15-year-old kid behind the counter was like, yeah, dude, whatever, and just gave me another, Push Pop. But my mom did that all the time. Like, I will support you, but you need to do it. And I think that gets lost. We get afraid that they can't do it. We want to do it for them, or we want it to be perfect, and we won't let them make mistakes. And they don't learn from that. And that's sad.
Yeah. So, and, again, this is more of a conversation about real world parenting than there's a lot of people on that wrote a parenting book that I could have on, but I thought this was such a fascinating conversation. What's been the blow pop moment for your kids? Like, how have you helped them empower them in that way?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just always encouraging them in what they're good at and what they want to do. For example, like my daughter Lily is she's afraid of things, but she wants to do like even today we were at the pool and there was a water slide that was out of control, right? Like it's a legit water slide, and she was afraid, but she's a great swimmer at the age of 6, and I knew she could do it. And we always instill, hey, it's okay to be scared, but we are also brave. And so she'll run up to the top and she screamed down. She's like, Daddy, I'm afraid, but I'm going to be brave. And she jumped in the slide and she crushed it. And I was like, yes, like, I feel like she's getting it. Like, there are things that we're all afraid of, but it's being brave in those moments and stepping up to the challenge, because the reality of it is it's never as bad as we think it is. And that's just today. There's something like that every single day with my kids. And that was just, to be brave is something that, sometimes I struggle with. Like, I'm afraid of something. I don't want to make that phone call. I don't want to have this awkward conversation, or I'm afraid this person thinks this of me. And it's like, no, step up, power through it, and be brave, and great things happen.
And, when you don't kind of encourage your kids to go down the slide and give them that courage. There's something I've mentioned on the show before, but I was 28 years old and I had a chance to teach some college in downtown Chicago. And I had a 25-year-old's mom call me about her grade.
Yeah, totally.
I was like, totally. Your kid is my age and she couldn't just talk to me about school. That's,
yes.
And
yes.
I look at that and, I say, oh, that's a kid that never got to go down the water slide.
That's right. And it's hard as a parent because we want what's best for our kids. But unfortunately, we sometimes look at the situation too closely. And if we really want what's best for our kids, we need to pull back and see the big picture and say, you know what? Maybe you do need to fall off your bike to learn how to ride it. Like, maybe you do need to forget your homework at home and get a 0. And I think because it gives them skill sets to be better adults, because that's what we're really trying to do. And we needed to just kind of get out of focus a little bit and see big picture, and if we really are concerned about doing what's best for our children.
Yeah. This is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. Matt Dally joins me. Matt had success very early on in young adulthood as a member of the band Superchick, and was parented very well. I know that because I know his parents. And so even though, this is a conversation in some ways about music, it's really about just the real world stuff that helps your kid hopefully become who they are.
That's right.
In all that. Actually, let's jump back to the music thing here for just a minute.
Yeah.
So, you were 18 years old and you were living in a van and really didn't have a like a fail-safe, like a lot of 18-year-olds do.
Totally.
That's right. The research says is that most younger adults and older adults now say that adulthood starts at 28.
Wow.
And I'm not sure as Christians that's exactly great, that like we have this culture where we're delaying adulthood as much as possible when God gives you a calling on your life and like stuff to do, and it's hard to do that when you're 27 and a half and you still think of yourself as a kid.
That's right. That's right.
So tell me about growing up young, growing up at 18 when people used to grow up but don't really anymore.
Well, I think for me it is strange, because when you start something so young, when you don't really have an experience like college, you are sitting here while your friends are writing papers and getting degrees and experiencing things that I never experienced. But by the time they graduate, like, I was already a professional. At 24 years old, we were hiring and firing crew members and doing, cost of goods on my merch and running a multi-million-dollar business and doing logistics. And it's kind of strange because you start having conversations with people who are older, because you're both a business owner, or you're both running an organization and leading people. So that was kind of interesting. And in some aspects, sometimes I still not that I think I missed out, but it's weird. Like right now I live in a neighborhood where everyone wants to talk college football and everyone talks about their college, and everyone's like, so what school did you go to? And you're like, just kind of the Ivy League of community colleges in the south side of Chicago called South Suburban, and they look at you like you're crazy. But it's also one of those things where I feel like I got to tour the world. I got to see things on a Tuesday that most people don't get to see in a lifetime, and I'm grateful for that. But I also understand that taught me to be the man I am today, being able to have that culture or have that experience, to be able to instill that into my children and to try to make them just, better humans in society,
Yeah, this is Stronger Together. We're talking marriage, parenting, relationship, and community each week on this show here on Shine.fm. Matt Daly of the band Superchick, which you may know, joins me. And really the crux of this conversation is parenting and risk. And so when, I hear what you had there when you were, 18 to 24 years old. And as, a soon to be parent in a couple of months, I think in, 18 to 20 some years for my daughter, like I want that to happen. And it's funny how that's getting, in some ways harder in American society to be able to hand kids like some responsibility that allows them to fail.
Of course.
So like, as you look at, you have, your oldest is 6, right?
Yeah.
You talked about the slide thing. Have you thought about like what if she's like 14 and she's like, you know what, I want to be in a band, or I want to finish high school and move to New York and be on Broadway?
Of course.
Obviously you were supported in that. So like what does that conversation look like? And then what does the parenting process look like between now and then to help a kid do what you did and really be ready for adulthood at 18?
Well, I think one of the biggest things, regardless, is still have the backup plan. I mean, look, I understand that my career was literally a miracle handed by God to me, where within of 2 years of creating a band, getting signed, touring the world, and traveling in a bus, that doesn't happen to most 18-year-olds. And that was the whole thing, was you're still going to start school. You're still going to go on the path to be a history teacher and a basketball coach at Tinley Park High School. Okay, that's still what you're going to do. And I think that's okay too. I think there's something to say about going all in, and I'm a firm believer at that. But also, there's also some responsibility that you also need to take, and part of that might be classes. But for me, no one knew that I was going to have a booking agent and then all of a sudden be playing 300 shows a year. And so at the time, college just was not an option, and luckily, success built enough that it was my career. And that doesn't always happen, but I think also there is a way to encourage kids at their seasons of life. Like, I want you to hustle. I want you to do what you're called to do. I also want you to maybe take some classes to teach you some responsibility, even if not the schoolwork, or maybe I want you to go out on missions for a year to kind of experience the world before we give you $40,000 a year to, you know, a college for you to get this quote unquote higher education. You know, I think some kids need life experiences, and I think it's okay to let them explore that, but also have boundaries too, because at the end of the day, you're still their parent, and it's okay to, you know, I think let them fly, but have conversations with them so that way they feel like you're on the same team, and maybe lay out options that, you know, are beneficial to them, but also show them a few real world, you know, lessons as well.
Let's go ahead and land the plane here, really talking about you and talking about transitions in life and humility and leaning into what God has for you. Yeah. By the way, Matt Dally of the band Superchick joins me on Stronger Together, talking marriage, parenting, relationships, and community. Okay, so you were playing, I mean, legitimate arenas. Yeah. And so, you know, you went from a kid with a dream to an adult that was seeing it all the time. And, you know, I mean, there really has to be probably nothing quite like that, right? Or at least that most people will experience.
No, there's not. That's true. That's true.
And even though most people won't experience that, everybody knows what it's like to kind of have this thing that you really love. Yeah. And then it's gone. And, you know, it's going to be different for everybody, but you're going to get fired. That you know, that thing you were working on so much, thing you were so passionate about is gone. And then all of a sudden, you're just in a room alone with yourself. And you have to maybe strip it back to the basics and just be able to hear God say he loves you and there's still another thing out there. Or what I mean, what was that from one day, like literal rock star, to the next day? Well, maybe not, but I'm home. Like, it's over.
Yeah. Well, for us, it kind of was so strange because in our case, my daughter was born 3 months early, the same day that my drummer got diagnosed with liver cancer. So in literally one day, I had doctors coming in saying, you know, your daughter's probably not going to survive, but if she does, she's not going to eat. She's probably not going to see. She's not going to be able to feed herself. She's probably not going to be able to walk. There's going to be some learning disabilities. And you're like, oh my goodness, like, what is happening? So it ended so strangely. It was literally instant, because we're finishing up our last record of our record deal. And when Chase got diagnosed, I mean, every day we talk, and it was, hey, I just need to get better and get in the studio. So, like, we're not going to finish a record without him, or we're not going to track drums without him. So it just kind of hit the pause button. So for me, it was crazy because we did have a baby born 3 months early. And there was crazy complications at first, but just the miracle to see God heal her body and do things that are completely unexplainable. But the crazy thing is that my wife, Nicole, had the real job with real insurance. Yeah. So I don't want to say I was forced, but the only option was to stay home and be daddy daycare. So you're trained from 18 until 31 that every time I get off the bus, I can have what I want when I want it. I make one phone call, and there's runners there to either drop me off or to bring me whatever it is that I need. Even though I felt like I had a reasonable handle on my identity, it still is a culture shock to be in a place where you're constantly getting served, to all of a sudden selflessly serving a little sick human being. Yeah. And because she was premature, we couldn't do daycare or anything for like a year. Like we're like, you can't even go to Target, you know, like, so. And I wasn't the most, like, I don't know, I don't say compassionate, but, you know, no one would have put me as the nurturing type. But to be able to have that experience changed my life forever. And I feel like, wow, like, to be able to stay home with my daughter for almost a year and a half, and to be there for the feedings and the late nights and the diapers, and experience something that not a lot of guys get to experience, was a total game changer. And I have so much more respect for moms and for working moms, or for, you know, anybody at the Chick-fil-A Playland that's sitting there while their kids are going crazy and they're falling asleep in their diaper bag. Like, I know that. I know what that is. And it's it was such a blessing for me to have that transition, even though it was abrupt and chaotic, and it was such an emergency situation on all fronts, having obviously your daughter be sick and possibly pass away, but also your best friend and your coworker and the guy that you went tour with and toured the world with and made memories with slowly passing away from a disease. Is 2012, 2013 was a rough year.
Yeah. Well, I remember because actually you were scheduled to be back in Chicago for a mutual friend's wedding. And then this happened 2 or 3 days beforehand. And I just kind of looked around and kind of heard the news and just was, blown away that your daughter had been born premature. So you go into crisis mode in a lot of ways. Yeah. Tell me about you and what's going on inside your head and heart and maybe some of the doubts and struggles as you have to figure out how to do this. Totally.
That's a great question because there's when you get thrown into a crisis, you kind of just respond, right? You don't even know you just have to survive and make it work. And then you start coming out of it and you start having to kind of deal with, it was a dark place for me, man. It was dark because you kind of go through this first sort of like a role reversal, especially with my wife having to work and me being home with the kid. And it's like, I just felt like I'm sitting there with like the apron cooking dinner and like, Nicole comes home and is like, so what did you do today? It's like, what did I do today? Like I was having these conversations that like my dad had with my mom, except I was on the receiving end of it. With that also having the band like not be around. The darkest place for me was 13 Grammys. It was in February, and I was getting texts like, "Hey man, where are you? Hey, are we going to this party? Are we doing this? Like, where are you at?" As I'm literally changing a diaper, and I was like, "Oh my gosh! Like, what a year! Like, I can't even believe this!" Like, and in my head, I was like, last year I was cool, and last year I was a real man, and last year whatever, like I was living life, and here I am, like completely different place than I thought, and it really wore on me. And I remember my mother, who actually was in town, she was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I'm just super depressed and super down." And I felt like my role or my identity or my I don't want to even say like my manhood was like in jeopardy. And she was just like, "Well, what do you think is quote unquote manly?" And I was like, "I don't even know anymore." And she said, "What I know of a good husband and a good man is doing whatever it takes to sacrifice for his family. And you are literally giving up everything to make sure that you parent this kid and take care of this sick kid. You are the most manly man that I know." And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, it was affirmation, I think, obviously from my mother, but God used her to completely change my perspective. It's not like, oh, here I am, like, parenting this kid. It's like, no, you know what? I'm doing whatever it takes for my family, and that's what makes me a good father, and that's what makes me a good husband, and that's what makes me a quote-unquote man, if you will. Yeah.
Matt from Superchick joins me. This is Stronger Together, a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. So we just went through the toughest thing in your whole life,
yeah.
Right? Yes. And so, now you have this life where, like, you're kind of normal again, I guess I would say. And
That's right. I'm a civilian.
You're a civilian. And you got a piece of it back. So sometimes we think we lost everything, and you go from, whatever your version of the Grammys to diaper duty is in a year. Right. Now you work in the business world, but you still get to do some music stuff. And I think, I think about that as, first time parenthood here in 2 months, is like, okay, so there's some things that are not going to be a part of my life for a few years, and then they'll kind of come back.
That's right. I mean, the reality of it is God puts things in your heart that you're supposed to do for the rest of your life. That is who you are. And so many times we think that our calling needs to be our vocation, or that our calling needs to be the majority of our time. And we forget about the seasons of our life. And a lot of times I even thought about just like the Abraham and Isaac thing, where God called, Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac, saying, "I want you to give up the most important thing in your life to me." And we're afraid to do that. But what happens is God says, "Oh, I thank you for being obedient. I'll give it back to you." And that's, I think, what happened with the real estate thing. I got my real estate license, honestly, a month before my daughter was born. I signed with my brokerage on a Wednesday night. I had my baby born on Thursday. So I was a realtor for 12 hours. How weird is that? I mean, that is a miracle. That is just a miracle that I got my real estate license on a whim because I was helping people move other musicians from out of town to Nashville anyway. And then transitioning out of nowhere to being like, oh, I guess I'm a realtor in a daddy daycare now. And so I really focused on real estate for a year and a half. And the real estate business started just kind of blowing up, and it started working itself. And I just looked at Nicole, my wife, and I said, I need to get back in the studio. I need to figure this out. And so it was about 3 months of just prayer and trying to figure out. I wanted to do a solo record. I wanted to write. And I met this guy who just moved from LA, and his name was Riley Friesen. And I met him, and in 4 minutes, he gave me the top 10 list of things I'm looking for in a producer and someone to create with. And I literally looked him dead in the eye. I'm like, dude, we're going to work together for the rest of our lives. And he's like, all right, weirdo. Like, cool. He's like, why don't you just come to the studio and we'll vibe out? And it was so weird that 4 days later, I went to his studio, and we've been writing and producing records together ever since. So now I feel like I live the dream. I wake up in the morning, I go to the studio, I make great music, and then my phone rings with my friends who want to cut real estate deals. And so I feel semi-retired. I will do real estate the rest of my life. I love it. I will do music the rest of my life. And that could be a season 2. But right now, I feel like I do not work. I get to hustle hard, which I enjoy, but it doesn't give me stress. But having a daughter in an emergency situation, having a best friend die, you get perspective on what real emergencies are. And there is nothing in the music business, there is nothing in a real estate transaction that is an actual emergency. And how grateful I am to know that. So when people are freaking out, or there's labels that have deadlines, like to be able to sit there and take a deep breath and know, like, I'm going to work so hard. I'm going to try my best. But this is not an emergency. And people get that vibe. And people want to work with you because they're freaking out and they're like, why are you calm? You're calm. Oh, you're calm. Oh, we're good. We're good. And that, in a sense, helps you with your business because more people want to refer you because you were quote unquote chill.
Yeah. And we can kind of land the plane right there. And if I can just make an observation that pretty much the only way you got there, like 19-year-old Matt, when you met 19-year-old me, you couldn't have known that. The only way that you know that is because you cried a lot for a really intense period of your life.
That's
and
right.
You had no idea what was going to happen, and you saw God show up and take care of it.
That's right. That's right. And he'll do that for you. You just got to let it happen.
And so, not that we want that for your life, but everybody's going to have a couple of those years, over your, 70, 80, 100-year life, whatever, you're going to have a couple of those years. And, hopefully that you can think back to a lot of people like this and times in your own life where you saw God provide.
That's right.
Let's just go out on, actually, I'll maybe give 2 pieces of information. So you're doing a solo record. If you just want to mention that and how people can connect with that, and then, just how they can connect with you if the stories hit home with them in some way.
Of course. Well, for me, I'm always working on music, stuff with Riley that I've been working on. There's a Love Collide record that I worked on, a Young Escape record that we're working on. There's a bunch of stuff. So you can follow me at Matt Daly Music on Instagram. You can follow me at Matt Daly at Facebook, Superchick Matt on Twitter. Doing a lot of stuff with the music thing. Also, with my real estate business, we teamed up with this organization called Homes for Homes. And so what I'm doing is every single house that I sell or buy, I take the first $3,500 and build a home for someone in Mexico, Uganda, or Guatemala, just trying to change the world and teach my kids that there's need and that there's other people that really can use our help. So we're doing some big things. So definitely give me a call. And if you have any real estate needs, I can find you a realtor in your area. I'm just kidding. That's so lame. That's so lame. I'm just kidding.
Hey, if you missed, if you missed any part of this conversation on the radio, you can grab the video on Facebook or YouTube by searching Shine.fm, or search Shine.fm podcast wherever you subscribe to audio. And you can also grab the links to connect with Matt right there. This is Shine.fm.
That was Stronger Together, a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationships, and community. Subscribe to the Shine.fm podcast to catch every episode of Stronger Together, available on the iTunes podcast app and wherever podcasts are available.